he said it, laughing from hunger and shame. I'll marry you when I become rich. The girl nodded, not because she believed him, but because for the first time that day, someone had believed in her. Years went by, and one day, the man returned to that same street, unrecognizable to everyone except her. The rusty fence along the old factory stretched like a scar, dividing the street and the vacant lot. The metal creaked with every gust of wind, complaining about life no less than the people who walked there. The asphalt was cracked and stained with dirty water from the night's rain. The morning was gray, and even the sun seemed hesitant to fully show itself. Only pale patches of light glided over the walls of abandoned buildings. The girl walked along the fence slowly, carefully placing each foot so as not to soil her old shoes. They were a little big for her, hand-me-downs from her cousin, and each step was accompanied by a quiet slap. She wore a faded school dress with a neatly sewn hem, and over it a simple apron. 2 braids, tightly plaited by her mother that morning, rested on her shoulders, straight as if measured with a ruler. In her hands, she held a tin lunchbox wrapped in an old napkin. She knew what was inside, a little rice and a piece of chicken. Her mother had tried her best, though she said she'd eat later. The girl understood that later often meant never, but she didn't ask questions. She simply nodded and smiled, because it made things easier for everyone. Near the fence, slightly off the road, stood a boy. He had appeared there a few days ago, thin, with messy hair and eyes too big for his face. His hoodie was torn at the elbows, and his sneakers had long lost their color. He always seemed alert, ready to run at any moment. The girl noticed how he sometimes watched people passing by, not with curiosity, but with cautious hope that quickly faded. Today he stood leaning against the fence, fidgeting with the edge of his sleeve. His stomach growled, betraying him, and he scolded himself for the sound as if it were shameful. "Hi," said the girl, stopping a few steps away from him. He flinched and looked at her like she was an unexpected phenomenon. "Hi," he replied quietly. She was silent for a moment, as if gathering courage, then carefully removed the napkin and held out the tin box to him. "Here." He didn't take it immediately. His gaze darted from the box to her face, as if trying to find the catch. "This is for you," she said. "You'll eat later." She hesitated and shrugged. "I'm not that hungry today." He snorted, clearly not believing her, but he took the box anyway. His fingers trembled, as if afraid the food would vanish if he touched it too much. He opened the lid, the smell of warm rice and chicken hit his nose, and for a moment his eyes filled with tears. He quickly looked away so she wouldn't notice. He ate quickly, almost greedily, but still carefully, as if afraid of seeming rude. Occasionally he paused, as if listening to his own sensations, unable to believe that his hunger was actually easing. "What's your name?" she asked, watching him. "Maxim," he replied without raising his head. "And yours?" "Anya." She smiled, and there was something surprisingly calm in that smile, as if she had long known everything would be all right, even if nothing around suggested it. Maxim Dale carefully closed the box. He handed it back, but she shook her head. "Keep it. You'll return it tomorrow." He looked at her in surprise. "You think I'll come back?" "Of course," she said. "I walk here every day." He lowered his gaze to the asphalt, then looked at her again. "You know," he began, then stopped, as if the words were stuck somewhere inside. He clenched his fists, drew in a breath, and blurted out, "Someday I'll be rich. Very rich. And then I'll marry you." He said it uncertainly, almost like a challenge, as if testing whether she would laugh. His voice was a mixture of hunger, dreams, and desperate hope that life could be different. Anya blinked, then laughed lightly and clearly, so that for a second even the fence stopped creaking. "All right," she said, still smiling. "Just don't forget." "I won't forget," he replied quickly, too quickly, as if afraid he might change his mind. She stepped closer and tapped the cracked asphalt between them with her finger. "Then come here." "Here, exactly here. I'll be waiting." He looked at that spot, as if trying to memorize every crack. "I'll come," he said softly. They stood for a while, unsure what to say next. Then Anya adjusted the strap of her backpack. "I have to go. Mom will worry." "Thank you," Maxim exhaled. "Really, thank you." She nodded and walked along the fence without looking back. Maxim watched her until her braids disappeared around the corner. He pressed the tin box to his chest and suddenly realized that on this gray day, something important had happened, something that couldn't be measured by food or promises. That day they parted, knowing neither last names, addresses, nor how many years would pass. But the asphalt remembered their footsteps, and the rusty fence became a witness to a promise that adults would have called foolish, but children knew was the only possible one. A black car stopped by the curb almost silently, as if it didn't want to disrupt the usual rhythm of the street. The engine fell quiet, and for a moment there was silence, broken only by the wind moving along the rusty fence. The factory still stood empty, its windows broken, paint peeling, but now new buildings had appeared nearby, shops, streetlights. The street had changed and yet stayed the same. The man in the back seat didn't hurry to get out. He looked out the window, his gaze tense, almost anxious. The expensive suit fit perfectly, but now it felt foreign, like a mask. In the reflection of the glass, he saw not only himself today, successful, confident, but also the thin boy in the torn hoodie who had once stood here, pressed against the cold metal of the fence. The door opened. He stepped out himself, signaling the driver to stop. The asphalt beneath his feet was still cracked as before. He took a few steps forward and stopped. At the gate stood a woman. She held a simple bag, without brands, and looked directly at him. Her gaze held no surprise, only calm, as if she had truly been waiting for this moment. Her hair was neatly styled, yet the familiar braids were still discernible, as if memory refused to let them disappear completely. "You came," she said. He felt something tighten inside. "Anya," he said her name, tasting it. "I was afraid I wouldn't recognize you." "And I was afraid you wouldn't come," she replied, smiling slightly. He slowly removed his watch, expensive and heavy, and placed it on the car hood. The gesture was almost unconscious, as if he wanted to leave all the unnecessary behind. "I became rich," he finally said. "Everything I talked about back then, I have it now." She nodded, but her eyes showed neither excitement nor envy. "I know," she said softly. "I saw your name in the news." He looked at her in surprise. "And you didn't think I had forgotten," she said. "I knew that if I remembered, I'd come exactly here. And if not, then it was meant to be." She opened her bag and took out the tin box, the very same one, cleaned until it shined, yet still with the same small dents on the lid. He held his breath, as if afraid the vision would disappear. "You kept it," he whispered. "Yes," she said, "not as a relic, but as a reminder of who we were." He took the box in his hands, and his fingers trembled. Again, just like many years ago. Before his eyes, scenes appeared: the gray morning, the smell of rice, her laughter. He realized that everything he had built started right here. "You know," he said, "I wanted to come back many times, but every time I thought, not yet, a little longer." Wealth became the goal, not the means. "And I learned to wait," she replied. "Not for you, for myself, for my life." She told him about the years she had spent here, about her mother, her work, how she had learned not to dream too loudly but never to stop believing. He listened without interrupting, realizing that before him stood a woman who didn't need saving. People passed by, some slowed their steps, others glanced back. The contrast between the luxury car and the old fence was too noticeable. But for the two of them, the world around them seemed to dissolve. He stepped forward and dropped to one knee right on the asphalt. His knee hurt against the crack, but he didn't flinch. "I said it back then," laughing, he said, looking into her eyes. "But now, I mean it. I will marry you, not because I became rich, but because when I was poor, you became my home." She closed her eyes for a second, as if gathering her thoughts. The wind brushed her hair, and the fence creaked quietly again. "I agree," she finally said, "but with one condition." He froze. "What is it?" "We'll remember where we came from," she said, "and never put money above people." He rose and hugged her tightly, afraid to let go. People around them applauded. Some smiled, some recorded it on their phones. But for them, it wasn't a show, it was a return. She pressed against him and whispered, "Did you keep your promise?" "No," he replied softly. "I'm only just starting." And in that moment, the street truly changed. Not the asphalt became smoother, nor the fence disappeared. Something deeper changed. Where once two children had stood, sharing a lunch, now stood two adults who understood that real wealth is not about going far away, but about one day returning.